Imagine this. For 500 years, a thriving European society existed right on the edge of the Arctic. I mean, they built churches, they traded with kings, and then they just vanished. So let's dive into this enduring mystery, the lost Norse colony of Greenland. Our story starts, kind of strangely, near its end. Picture this. It's the year 1540. A brutal storm has just thrown a ship full of Icelandic sailors completely off course. So they end up finding shelter on the coast of Greenland, a place no European had been to for decades. And as they're exploring this totally desolate frozen beach, they find something. Well, something pretty unsettling. A body lying face down in the snow. Now, at first glance, he was dressed just like a local Inuit hunter would be, in practical furs and seal skins. But when they turned him over, they saw the pale skin and the red hair of a European. He was a Norseman. I mean, can you imagine how shocking this was? He was like a ghost, a single remnant of a whole civilization that everyone thought was long, long gone. And right beside him was an iron knife, a really precious tool that had been sharpened so many times it was worn down to almost nothing. It just left those sailors with this haunting question. Who was this guy? And where in the world did all his people go? To really understand the tragedy of their end, we've got to go back and understand the triumph of their beginning. Because this wasn't always a story of grim survival. For centuries, it was an incredible success story. It all kicked off way back in 985 AD, when the legendary Eric the Red sailed over from Iceland. And get this, he arrived during something called the medieval warm period, a time when the climate was a whole lot milder. By the 1200s, the colony was absolutely booming. They even built this incredible stone cathedral at Garda that was just as grand as the ones back home in Norway. And at its peak, this remote Arctic settlement was home to 5,000 people. Just let that sink in for a second. 5,000 people. A bustling European society with farms and churches thriving on the very edge of the known world. So how'd they pull it off? Well, they brought their livestock with them, cattle and sheep, and built their classic European-style houses. But what's really fascinating is they didn't just survive here. They got rich. They completely cornered the market on walrus ivory, a luxury good so prized by European royalty that we're talking more valuable than gold. It really seems like they had tamed the North. But you know how these things go. The world doesn't stay the same. The very conditions that let the Norse flourish were about to turn on them. The climate, which had been their greatest ally, was about to become their deadliest enemy. And I mean their entire world just started to shift, dramatically. That medieval warm period had given them these lush green fjords and open seas for travel and farming. But then, starting around 1300, the little ice age kicked in. Suddenly, the summers got way shorter, and the sea ice that was once totally manageable began to literally choke the shipping lanes, freezing the fjords solid for most of the year. It was just a perfect storm of disasters, one thing after another. The sea ice became like a chainsaw blade, as one historian put it, just tearing apart the wooden ships they needed for trade. Then, disaster hits Europe. The Black Death wipes out their main trade partners in Norway, and then pirates burn down their main port. The ships just stopped coming. The Norse in Greenland were utterly, completely alone. So as those years of silence turned into decades, the Greenlanders faced a really stark choice. Adapt to this new, colder world, or die clinging to their old ways. It all boiled down to a question of identity versus survival. And this really gets to the absolute heart of the mystery. You had two different peoples living on the same land, but in completely different worlds. On one hand, you had the Thule Inuit, who were masters of the Arctic. They hunted seals from kayaks, wore layered, incredibly warm furs. They thrived. And on the other hand, you had the Norse, still trying to raise cattle on frozen ground, wearing these impractical wool clothes, and just desperately needing iron from a Europe that had totally forgotten they even existed. So why didn't they just learn from their neighbors? It's a great question, and it seems they just refused. To them, adopting Inuit technology and hunting techniques, well, it may have felt like a form of cultural suicide. They were Europeans, Christians, and farmers, first and foremost. To abandon that identity, even if it meant survival, was maybe a price just too high for them to pay. The archaeological evidence from their last years, it's just heartbreaking. Excavations of their trash piles show they were so desperate for food, they were actually eating the hooves of their last cattle. It gets worse. They even butchered and ate their own hunting dogs, which were absolutely vital for their survival. And their skeletons tell a very clear story of profound, severe malnutrition. So, after all this struggle, centuries of it, the colony just slowly faded away. But we do have one last, documented moment, one final whisper from their world before the silence became permanent. The very last piece of writing we have from the Greenland Norse is from the year 1408. It's a church record, and it documents the wedding of two people, Thorstein Olafsson and Sigrid Bjornsdottir, at that beautiful stone church in Hvalsey. And after that wedding, after that one last brief moment of community and maybe hope, the record just goes dark. No more letters, no more ship logs, no more tax records. Nothing. Sometime in the mid-15th century, the last light in the last farmhouse flicker out for good, and the Greenland Norse vanished from history. The story of the Greenland Norse isn't just some old historical mystery. It's a haunting, cautionary tale that really echoes into our own time. It forces us all to ask a pretty tough question. As our world transforms around us, will we have the courage to adapt? Or will we be the ones clinging to what's familiar, right up until it's too late?